I think there's a huge problem on this earth that not enough people have other people to talk to about movies. And guys, that is exactly what ZakIsCinema is here for. So welcome here. We'd love to sit down and talk movies together here. So consider joining at ZakIsCinema. Today we are going to be reviewing and discussing the movie Scream 5, or I guess just Scream, which came out in 2022. A new Ghostface terrorizes Woodsboro decades later, pulling legacy survivors back into another cycle of violence rooted in obsession with horror in the past. Obviously, on the channel here, we have been covering the entire Scream franchise in its entirety, leading up to Scream 7, and guys, we have almost made it. We got one more right after this to review and discuss. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into the review section, starting with the positives or just the things that I enjoyed most about this movie. And on rewatch, I think the element that stood out to me the most was this movie's very serious tone while still having that, of course, over the top and meta angle to it. But I believe the opening immediately sets a tone that is more serious than what we've kind of come to expect in this Scream franchise. And one way they do that is building some pretty great, genuine tension. I love in the opening scene to this movie how they introduce Tara's inhaler, which is such a simple but effective way to really build that tension, because you're constantly waiting for that matter to once again show up whenever Ghostface decides to chase her or she leaves it behind. So it's like one of those elements that's introduced very early on, and you're waiting for it the entire movie. And I like how in this movie, they of course have that classic Scream opening, but they choose to do something a little bit different with the Ghostface killer, specifically on the cell phone. I like that Ghostface here initially is calling Tara and pretending to be one of her mom's like AA group member friends, and it's a smart way to kind of keep Tara on the phone a little bit longer compared to just Ghostface calling, instantly giving this creepy kind of vibe, asking about your scary movie. It's a good way to keep her talking without it feeling kind of goofy or forced, in my opinion. And when Ghostface is talking with Tara and then pivots over to asking her about the stab movies, I love her response and how realistic it kind of feels for the modern age. Like someone who knows horror and knows the classics, but really isn't obsessed with the originals or classics, and definitely prefers more of that modern angle while ignoring everything that influenced their modern movies. Definitely something I kind of relate to. And even though currently Jenna Ortega definitely feels like she's getting stuck in that typecast kind of role with that typical character she plays, but here I think she's genuinely great in horror, and especially movies like this and the movie X. I hope she continues doing more of this because she is genuinely fantastic. In the opening, that hallway scene when she's kind of bleeding out, I believe sliced or stabbed once or twice, she is panicking and trying to activate that security system on her phone while Ghostface keeps disabling it at the same time she's trying to activate it. It's incredibly tense, realistic, and feels so grounded. You definitely feel like you're in that tight-knit hallway right with her character. And I also really like how this is the first Scream movie with its opening that has the victim that actually survives and eventually becomes part of that main group of characters. I think that alone makes this movie feel like it's doing something different and doing something different upon its opening scene, so it kind of sets up your expectations to be just a little bit different. And just like with any Scream movie, but especially the slasher whodunit subgenre, I think this movie does a fantastic job at setting up such a large suspect pool early on. I think Richie immediately feels suspicious as the boyfriend character. Chad's random bruises kind of stand out to you as soon as somebody points those out. Liv avoiding visiting Tara in the hospital kind of feels off, and Amber's possessiveness over Tara definitely raises some additional red flags, and even Wes having this crush on Tara adds another layer to that suspect kind of mystery throughout the movie. And immediately they set up this large group of friends where you could see anybody being the killer, but then you also have Tara's sister Sam with her outside friends coming into the main cast as well, and you could just see this whole town and community really being a suspect. So I think they improve upon that immediately after some of my nitpicks in Scream 4. And a huge standout to me that I completely forgot was Sheriff Hicks' return to the Scream movies. And like Dewey that I pointed out in Scream 4, I think Sheriff Hicks here is significantly toned down in a way that kind of makes her more interesting and showcases some of that progression. And her son Wes definitely have a standout scene in here with that psycho-inspired kill scene with her son. It is brutal and unexpected the way that they kind of set it up. And because they set it up to be this psycho remake kind of scene, you expect Wes to kick the bucket first, when in reality it's Sheriff Hicks that gets it first, and then her son eventually gets it anyways. That slow, drawn-out scene of where you're unsure if Ghostface is actually still there, was just going after Sheriff Hicks, and doesn't care about her son, leads to one of the most brutal neck stabs, not only in this franchise, but in any movie that I could really think of off the top of my head. And right there, I love how the movie finally commits to that slasher violence I've been begging for in this franchise, instead of kind of holding itself back. And just like with any Scream movie, this one has a pretty prominent commentary and theme to it. I love within the first 35 minutes, the movie literally gathers every potential suspect into a room to talk about how they're all potential suspects and the horror tropes that go alongside them. It's classic Scream, but it's done in kind of a modern angle. And I think the Requel or legacy sequel commentary is one of the strongest parts in the movie. I love how the characters gather around, explain the rules, notice that the killer is following this Requel commentary and slasher angle. They point out the connection to Sam and Billy Loomis, and they start going on rants about franchises, constantly going back to the original. Just feels dead on for what this movie's doing and what a lot of movies have been doing as of recently. I love the references to Star Wars, Halloween, Jurassic Park, and I think even Ghostbusters. I think it perfectly captures that era of reboots and legacy sequels that, again, we're still seeing currently. And I think what really surprised me on rewatch, and especially just watching all these movies so close together, is how serious this movie takes itself without losing that Scream tone that we're coming to the movie for. I think the maturity of legacy characters really feel earned rather than forced. And I also love that the third act takes place in the same exact house, Stu Macher's house from the original. Not only is it obviously a great callback, but having the characters literally watching the original Stab movie, and during the finale, they're watching the finale of the Stab movie, which is also kind of being recreated here, which is also kind of referencing Scream, but then also Stab. It like really layers that movie within a movie idea that is very satisfying without feeling necessarily repetitive. And in my opinion, I think the killer reveals work really, really well here, especially because of how kind of unpredictable they feel, at least in my opinion. You spend the whole movie just wondering who the killer is going to be. Are they going to go with one killer? Are they going to do the classic two killers or maybe switch it up and do three killers? Are they going to repeat the boyfriend twist or are they going to flip it? And honestly, it just leaves you with so many questions with this legacy sequel. It's hard to kind of pinpoint just one or two suspects. So almost any option would have worked. And in my opinion, that kind of made any option pretty surprising. And once we get to those reveal sections of this Scream movie, I think Mikey Madison and Jack Quaid absolutely do a phenomenal job and really sell this reveal and plan that they're going forward with. They go really big with their performances, but never lose the darker, more grounded tone that the movie establishes. They don't feel like they're trying to rip off the original Scream's ending with Billy and Stu, but they kind of borderline on doing that, but kind of also do their own thing, and I think it works really well in my opinion. And I think for this legacy sequel that's commenting on legacy sequels, their motivations fit perfectly within this Scream franchise. Yes, it's repetitive, but that's also kind of the point, and they acknowledge that. They're explicitly reacting to that toxic fandom, bad legacy sequels, and modern franchises, kind of ruining what they love from early on in their favorite movies and slasher franchises here. And I think their idea of framing Sam because she is Billy Loomis's daughter is such a believable cover-up story that from an outside perspective, I feel like it'd be hard to even push back or kind of question that in any way. And I think the third act really goes for it with its violence and some of the best and most entertaining parts in this entire franchise. With Mikey Madison's character just like begging for her life before Gail and Sydney show up to shoot her, only for her to fall over and catch fire on the burning stove, is brutal and dark, but still holds that funny edge that it's going for. And I think Richie's death is even better and more fantastic, using Billy Loomis as this voice in Sam's head, encouraging her to embrace that side that he knows is there, works surprisingly well within this moment. That moment when Sam grabs the knife and just starts stabbing Richie is so uncomfortable, excessive, and intentionally hard to watch. It just like, it gives you those phantom pains that only a couple movies have ever really done for me, which makes it so effective. And beyond that, I like how that movie kind of sets the seeds of Sam's darker tendencies very early on, framing them as intrusive thoughts that have now started to bleed into her actions. And it is so sad. I'm not going to hold it against this movie, but it's so sad that we're probably not going to get a satisfying ending to that. But still, I love it in this movie, and I love how it plays out with that revenge side towards Richie. Because I think Richie just laying on the ground with all those stab wounds, asking about how his movie's going to end and questioning, like, what about my movie? While Sam just slowly cuts his throat is the most perfect, unsettling kind of payoff I would have ever expected for a movie like this. And both satisfying and then like those breadcrumbs of moral complications kind of come in. And I think it leaves this movie off on such a perfect note that is truly unique for this franchise. But we're going to do something a little bit different here. I'm moving into still positives, but leaning towards that mixed angle because I just have one giant standout here that really bothers me because I adore the character of Dewey. I love him in all these movies, and he is right up there with Sidney Prescott for me as my favorite Scream character. And I especially love Dewey's arc in this movie. Across the franchise, you notice him becoming slightly more hardened and serious, and then we find him about 10 years after part 4 just completely shut off from the world. He's jobless, alone, and clearly someone who has not moved past those original 4 Scream movies. And I think what works best for me here is they never lose his kind of awkward and nerdy charm that he's got. Like that scene in his trailer with Sam and Richie where he lays suspects and offers to eventually help them. Feels like classic Dewey, but filtered through this older man sadness kind of presence. And early on, his phone call with Sydney, kind of warning her, is fantastic, especially the fact that she doesn't immediately rush back into action, again showing how much Sydney has tried to move on and grow as a character. But that being said, I really hate and dislike how Dewey dies in this movie. Sure, it's very bold and raises those stakes immediately, but the execution is just so frustrating. Like, killing him mid-movie instead of him going out in more of a meaningful third act kind of sacrifice way feels like such a missed opportunity. Like, I'm not too mad that they decided to kill him in this movie because I think that's a bold swing that this franchise really needed. Again, just that execution of him going out like this feels so anticlimactic. Like, it should have been a third act thing where he saves everybody but has to die because of it. And it's especially annoying because his death here comes from him making a decision that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, going back instead of finishing the job from the elevator. He has a gun. He could have just shot Ghostface in the head. He's a police officer, I assume a pretty good shot. So him going back and like sending the group down, like he has to make this big move, just makes no sense and feels like it's pushing to be dramatic in a moment that really didn't need it. And I blame more of this on, I believe, Scream 2, where it's not this movie's fault, but with Scream 2, with them setting up Gale and Dewey apart just to do that same plot line again, they do it here. So if Scream 2 didn't do it, I wouldn't mind it so much here. I think it makes more sense here compared to Scream 2. So that's like a little bit of a mixed element here, but starting Gale and Dewey breaking up again, only to never give them that closure or just a look or smile or a nod, and just left unresolved is so frustrating. Like, I don't hate that he dies, I just hate how little that emotional arc really never gets its sort of payoff. So it's a big stain on this movie because I love elements of what they're doing with Dewey, but it feels like it doesn't go anywhere. And then realizing that it's Mikey Madison that took him out just again feels even more frustrating. Like, they kind of set up this amazing arc for Dewey just to kind of say fuck it and never mind, we don't want to do that. It's just so frustrating with this movie, and unfortunately it does kind of bring it down because Dewey is just such a perfect character in my opinion. But with that said, let's jump into my mixed aspects for the movie, and this is definitely more mixed negative. And one thing that really stands out to me here is the Billy Loomis kind of ongoing cameo. I like the idea that Billy is appearing as this manifestation of Sam's psyche rather than a simple little cameo. And the backstory of Billy being Sam's father and this discovery that leads to a fractured family is genuinely interesting and such a cool little setup. However, the execution just has never worked for me and hurt the movie even more on this most recent rewatch. The exposition is kind of clunky, and the de-aging or overuse of makeup on Billy looks very distracting. And I think this could have worked if they maybe just stuck with a voiceover in Sam's head. I think that would have made a lot more sense, with maybe a few vague, kind of in the background, out of focus shots of him where you could make out who it is but couldn't really see the close-up of the face. I think when they do those close-up face shots, it just kind of makes me laugh just a little bit, and I can never take some of those scenes serious, even though I really enjoy the idea that they're going for. But with that all said, I will say that Scream 2022 feels like a confident, mature relaunch of the franchise that takes its legacy seriously, delivers brutal and inventive set pieces, and uses sharp, self-aware commentary to justify its existence without losing what makes Scream work. So I will say, for my rating for this movie, this is a hard one because overall I think it's one of the best movies in the franchise. There's so many fantastic elements, but then there's just those few elements like with Dewey and the Billy Loomis stuff that really kind of hold it back for me and really stick out in my mind whenever I think of Scream 2022. But as of right now, I will say that this is a movie I'd like to own and add to my collection. Oh wait, I did, but I only did it at that discounted price. So I think it's worth owning because I got that random 2-pack that I'm now gonna have to buy the third one, but whatever. I got the 2-pack for a discount. I think Scream 2022 is worth buying if you could find it at that discounted price. But you guys have my thoughts here on Scream 2022. Please let me know your thoughts and feelings on this movie. What were your thoughts and feelings when it first came out? Have they kind of changed on rewatch or the direction that this franchise has gone with the mess that is Scream 7? Let me know all that information down below. But that's about it. I appreciate anybody watching my videos, so thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.